It is nearly 20 years since the Boxing Day tsunami, which killed almost 250,000 people. Even 20 years on, that figure is staggering, isn't it? Mass destruction was caused in countries surrounding the Indian Ocean. Now, let's take a look at the footage of Patong Beach in Phuket in Thailand. You can see the ferocity of the waves hitting the shore and dragging debris inland.
Now, Luke Simon was on the island of Koh Phi Phi in Thailand when he was separated from his brother Piers. He spent days searching for Piers before his body was tragically found on New Year's Eve. And we'll speak to him in a moment, along with our chief correspondent, Richard Gaisford, who actually flew out to Thailand 20 years ago to cover that story. First of all, though, Fran Lenori has more.
No one knew it was coming. As giant waves smashed into the coastlines around the Indian Ocean, people ran for their lives.
Palm trees were being bent over and snapping. The horizon was just boiling in front of us.
Luke Simon was on holiday in the Thai island of Koh Phi Phi with his brother Piers, his then-girlfriend Sophie, and some friends.
Sophie was sort of being taken off down here. We managed to get Sophie back.
20 years later, Luke is telling his story as part of an ITV documentary and returned to Thailand to reflect on the tragedy.
We knew that the danger was coming from there, so at that point we then took a 90-degree turn and made our way down this way here.
As the second wave hit, Luke realised Piers was missing.
This is one of the posters that's been put up. It's Piers Simon, 33 years old, from Somerset.
Luke searched for his brother for 5 days and was interviewed on GMTV by Richard Gaisford.
There are still a lot of people around who haven't been reported yet, so we're maintaining positive.
Sadly, Piers's body was found on New Year's Eve. He was one of 230,000 people who died in the Boxing Day disaster. The tsunami that hit was triggered by an earthquake measuring 9.3 in magnitude. It devastated communities, leaving 2 million people homeless across 14 countries. In memory of him, Piers's family raised tens of thousands of pounds to help rebuild Koh Phi Phi, a place Luke says brings him comfort as he tries to focus on the good times they had together.
Well, Luke Simon and Richard Gaisford join us now. Good to see both of you this morning. Goodness me, it seems so fresh in memory, but also, of course, such a long time ago. But it's been brought back. I'm sure there isn't a day that goes by when you don't think of your brother, but it's been brought, the whole episode, to the front of your conscience, hasn't it? By retracing your steps to visit.
Yes, it has. I mean, in some instances, it does feel like a lifetime ago. So much has happened in my personal life and what we achieved through the charity that it makes time feel, very long. But actually, this remembering and commemorating this 20th anniversary has brought everything back to the forefront of my mind.
What are your memories of the day, if I can ask you to go through them again?
Well, I think a lot of it was just surprise, It was a beautiful, sunny, tropical day. And when you think of these big disasters, you expect there to be huge amounts of rain or wind, but it was a perfect day. And so it just took us by surprise. We didn't get a chance to see the sea that morning, so we didn't get any clues or cues from that. And so we were really just reactive to how people were behaving. And then, of course, a little bit later on, we could see it coming towards us. So it was just about instinct and reaction.
So it was Boxing Day. Were you celebrating with the family? Were you having a special time, like one would imagine you might?
Yeah, I was with Piers and some friends, and we'd had a really lovely Christmas day. We were actually about to leave Koh Phi Phi and go to a much quieter island, because Phi Phi's a fun island. And so, yeah, we were a bit sleepy that morning, but the plan was to leave, move on and go and have 2 days of relaxation.
So what was the first indication you had that something was wrong?
We were sat in an open-front cafe, 1 row in from the beach, and people came running in. They came running in with real purpose, knocking people and tables and chairs over. So, when that happens, you don't have a chance to think about it, you don't have a chance to process. So we just all stood up and migrated, really, with them. And their instinct was to run through the cafe and to try and get out through the back. So we just followed.
And how quickly were you in water?
I was very lucky. I didn't get into water, but from people running in to us going through the cafe, out through the kitchen, into the market area, where we then saw the wave coming in from the north side, it took about 40 seconds.
Wow. How did you manage to not be in water? Did you
I
climb
managed
up?
I climbed up on a 9-foot-high corrugated iron shed roof.
But Piers wasn't able to climb.
Piers wasn't able to, so I got on the roof. Piers and Ben and Sophie went around the building that I was on. There was a wall there, but Ben got hit by the water. He got transported down this alleyway, and then he tucked into a pillar. I got on the roof and was trying to pull Sophie up, and she says Piers was underneath trying to hoist her up.
And you were so focused on saving your then-girlfriend, Sophie, that you only found out afterwards that Piers wasn't there any longer. Yeah,
my focus became really narrow, and you know, Sophie was trapped. I was trying to get her out of the water and up onto safety, and it was only when we were then sat on the ridgeline of a two-storey building, the highest point that we could get to at the time, that I then sort of surveyed around and realised that Piers wasn't with us.
And he would
have been... You're talking minutes and seconds, aren't you?
Yes.
That's the thing. It's not like you sort of forgot for a couple of hours. The speed of these things is breathtaking.
Yes, and you just act on instinct and adrenaline. I can't really remember getting on the roof. It just happened.
I think which is very striking to me, reading about this last night and reliving memories of 20 years ago, is I don't think I'd realised this. The earthquake happens out in Indonesia. The first kind of impact of the tsunami happens about 20 minutes after that in, I think, Banda Aceh in Indonesia. But actually, the impact in Thailand and Sri Lanka is 2 hours later. 2 hours between the earthquake and the first wave, and then this terrible impact where you are in Thailand. And yet, as you said, there was no warning at all.
No. And we didn't even feel the earthquake. I mean, other people did on the island that we were on, but we didn't hear it. So, you know,
I think to us now, though, you think to yourself, surely if an earthquake was happening in Indonesia on this massive scale, like, you know, the biggest in decades, surely, you know, somehow it would have gone round the world, be careful, there's a tsunami coming. But maybe 20 years ago, the communication was different, or maybe our understanding was different, something. You know, I would like to believe there would be more warning now. I don't know if that's right.
I think there would now. I think there are warning systems in place in the Indian Ocean. I believe that they weren't there 20 years ago. And, of course, telecommunications now, we all have mobile phones, and so I think messages would certainly get through. And now that we've had this one, of course, you know, tsunamis are a known part of people's vocabulary now, whereas beforehand, you know, it was a complete unknown.
Richard, I remember being on air. You and I have worked together a long time on GMTV, as it was when this happened, and you covering the story very, very movingly at the time. What were your memories of when you first knew?
So I got there, and it was almost as if nothing had happened. The airport was operating normally. Phuket itself, the bars and the restaurants were still operating. And then you got to the front 2 blocks near the sea.
So this was Thailand, Phuket?
This was Thailand, Phuket. So I flew into Phuket just after Boxing Day, and very little existed. And then you'd walk down the street and you'd see these boards where people had posted pictures of the loved ones that were missing. And it was something that has stayed with me forever, to see the pictures of these people who had been washed away largely from the beach, because that's the time that the wave hit, and people had gone down to the beach there, and so many of these small children's faces. So many Western families had gone there for Christmas, to have this most incredible Christmas. And yet we're coming up to you. Can you help me? My son, my daughter is missing, you know, and then I spoke with Luke.
So there's people still holiday making.
Well, that was the other
And alongside that, there were people, as you guys were, kind of searching for loved ones.
And that was the contrast. So you had the backstreet bars operating, people drinking, people on the beach. I met British holidaymakers drinking beer on the beach, telling me that they were very sorry that hundreds, thousands of people had died, but they wanted to continue their holiday. And yet we had these just heart-wrenching stories like Luke's.
Oh, why do you think that was? Because the whole thing was almost surreal. It came from nowhere, disappeared to nowhere, and therefore for the people in the middle of it, it was almost disorientating.
I think it was, and you met families still who'd gone back to the beach with their children, trying to explain what had happened, but then still trying to get on with their holidays.
And Luke, how many hours or even days were you searching for Piers?
5 days.
5 days?
5 days, yeah. We found him on New Year's Eve. 5 days. 5 days when, as Richard said, things have kind of gone back to normal, and yet, of course, that's not true. I mean, it's a terrible kind of change which has happened in that place and for you. Yes, we had we had some false alarms, you know, and we were really running all sorts of scenarios because we'd been a party of 5. And then all of a sudden we'd lost one, and you know, so I was just trying to run lots of strategies about where he could be, what might have happened, and then when we had false alarms, it then shifted, and actually we started to use the media to try and get Piers' picture out. So in Richard's clip there, you see the missing person poster that we'd made because we just needed Piers' image and his face out there because someone might have sat next to him if he was alive or been on a boat with him. So you know, we're just constantly in those 5 days trying to work out and piece it together, you know.
All the chaos. You've done something wonderful. You've turned an absolute family tragedy into something that you have made a life's work for charity, haven't you? Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so the treatment we got from the Thai people in those 5 days was just so humbling. You know, they really prioritised us, that I felt that we had a really good opportunity to help them in their time of need, given the time that they had afforded me in my time of need. So we found Piers on New Year's Eve. We flew his body home on January the 2nd, and on January the 4th, we opened up a bank account to start raising money. It became the Piers Simon Appeal, which we ran for 4.5 years, and then we've diversified into a charity called School in a Bag in Piers' memory that distributes rucksacks of school equipment all around the world for disaster-affected children.
So some good from a terrible, terrible tragedy.
Yeah.
Your documentary Tsunami, The Wave That Shook the World, is on December the 27th, ITV1, ITVX at 10 p.m. That will be a very powerful programme, I'm sure. Richard, an amazing journalistic moment for you to be there.
Oh, just the most, one of the most important stories. And to go from there, we went to Banda Aceh afterwards. So we, you know, as
Which was
Luke
really
was
grim.
organising, repatriating Piers' body, we were flying to Banda Aceh, and you will never see devastation like that. An entire city basically wiped off the map. Just the most incredible scenes that we had there of, you know, walking through rubble, walking through basically bodies, and finding young orphans desperately searching for their parents. Really, really awful place to be. And yeah, I mean, it does feel very fresh still, 20 years on.
Have you been back since, Richard?
I haven't been back to Banda Aceh. I have been to Thailand.
Do you feel there's a spirit of recovery there?
Yeah, no, for sure. And it is incredible just how quickly, and all these places, and I've done 25 years of this now. You go to these disaster zones and how quickly people bounce back, how resilient they are. But it's always still the memory of what happened there.
The thing I remember about that day was that it was on our television screens, it was Boxing Day, there was this big wave of tsunami. I don't think any of us, or I certainly didn't understand what it was.
No.
And actually the scale and the destruction became apparent as the days went on. But on that first day, I don't think any of us knew what happened.
And I'm watching these documentaries now, 20 years on, and I'm seeing pictures that I haven't seen before and still reassessing the scale of this thing.
Exactly.
It was just incredible.
It's nightmarish, isn't it? That's what I remember feeling on that day, that it's everybody's worst nightmare.
Yeah.
Look, wonderful that you've turned it into something so positive.
Thank you.
And thank you very much indeed,
Thank you,
Richard,
Luke.
as well, for sharing your memories.